US President Donald Trump dramatically leaves the G7 summit in Canada to return to Washington. This comes as the situation between Israel and Iran escalates. We will discuss what it all means on this episode of the BBC's daily news podcast, Newscast. Hello, so I've just finished recording this episode of Newscast, which we did late afternoon on Tuesday. We had Lise Doucette here in the studio, and we were joined by our friend from Washington, D.C., Katrina Perry, who's visiting the UK for a couple of days. And we thought we would do a sort of sit-rep about what is happening between Israel and Iran, which is kind of dramatic enough. But then halfway through the recording, as you will hear, there was some quite dramatic posts from Donald Trump on Truth Social. And so you will be able to hear us just analysing what they mean in real time, and you'll probably be able to hear this sort of incredulity in my voice as I'm reading some of them out. So that is what you'll now hear on this episode of Newscast. Hello, it's Adam in the Newscast studio, and here with me is BBC Chief International Correspondent Lise Doucette. Hi, Lise.
Good to be with you again, Adam. Something must be happening if we're together again.
Yes, although it's always nice to see you.
Thank you.
And making her debut in the actual Newscast studio rather than the pretend one in Washington, it's Katrina Perry. Hello.
Hi, Adam. It is so exciting to be here in real life, IRL, as they say.
And what brings you over the pond? Oh, that's a terrible cliche. I can't believe I said that, but
It's okay. You're allowed.
Yeah. Just visiting HQ.
I'm visiting the mothership here. Yeah, I've got some shows to present from here and meeting all my wonderful colleagues in real life, which I have never done because I'm a relative newbie to the BBC and we all talk to each other so much, especially Lise and I on a split screen. We share the screen but never in the same place.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. And it is funny because the studio you do Newscast from in Washington, D.C. has like a sort of miniature version of this studio like in the corner, doesn't it?
It's like the poor man's version.
Yeah.
I don't have a plant. I don't have a rug.
Coffee mug?
I do have a coffee mug, and I do have the same chair as you're in, actually.
Yeah.
That's about it.
So sort of uncanny valley, like nearly the same.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, you were at the Trump military parade at the weekend, weren't you, in DC? What was it like, and how did it compare in reality to the videos we saw on social media of it being kind of sparsely attended and not very professional?
I wouldn't speak about the professionalism of it because, you know, the US military is incredibly professional, and the kind of everything, the marching and everything that we saw was like what you might see in other American parades. Like we're used to seeing particularly, say, members of law enforcement marching down Fifth Avenue in New York for the St. Patrick's Day parade or whatever. It was sparsely attended.
Just random.
I always find the Irish.
A random.
Listeners know that by now. But yeah, I mean, it was what you could see on TV. The bleachers were empty in parts. I will say what would not have come through the TV was the really gross weather conditions. It was very, very sticky, humid, about to thunderstorm type of weather. And it was raining on and off. And it was relatively late in the evening on a Saturday. But I think kind of if you desperately wanted to be there, you went. And if not, you watched it on TV.
Yeah, it's interesting just hearing the factors that you actually can't see on social media. Like, there's always a context.
Yeah, and it was very long. Like, it was a very, very long parade. It was several hours, and there had been, like, you can't ever underplay the factor of weather in these things. Like, there had been an unbelievable thunderstorm flood warning the night before that morning, and then it was threatening all day. So, like, if you've got kids and everything, and all the streets in town were shut down, it's quite a massive undertaking to decide that you're going to go into that type of thing in all your rain gear. You're going to have to walk for probably a mile from wherever you park your car to the place, and therefore potentially walk back in a thunderstorm. And thunderstorms in America are like nothing we'd see over this side, like they are really quite serious.
But you think it was really the weather? I mean, if people because it was the first one of its kind.
It was a factor.
It was supposed to be. It's a big birthday, 250th birthday.
Yeah.
Does it tell us something about politics or something about the weather?
Fair point.
Yes.
I don't know that that's the type of event that brings people from all across America to go and see. And, DC and the general Maryland, Virginia area, it's not a hugely populated area. Many people are in the military anyway or work in federal jobs. They don't necessarily go in to see that stuff, or there's so many museums. I don't know that it's like a thing you would undertake to do, even if it was also the president's 79th birthday. I'm not sure
It's a bit of an insult.
that's something you've come to commemorate. But yeah, I mean, I'm like, the country is so polarized. You've got to look at it in the factor of all the marches and demonstrations that are taking place. There've been, what's looks like to have been an assassination of a state lawmaker in Minnesota. So there's a safety factor there as well. So I think it was, excuse the pun, a perfect storm of factors that people just would have thought, I'm not going to go to that.
Right, let's catch up on today's news then. Lise, where are we today in the Israel-Iran conflict? What are some things that have been happening that you would like to bring to our attention so we can understand what's going on?
I think it's the deep uncertainty that is really frightening for people. It is frightening for the Iranians, for the Israelis, to be living under these barrages of missiles, unprecedented. But neither side knows how far this is going to go, what each side has in their arsenal. Today, Iran's military announced that they had been trying out a new missile. Israelis have been shocked that their much vaunted air dome, the dome, is not stopping all of the missiles from entering. So they're having to take the sirens seriously, going into the shelter, not coming out of the shelter, waking up constantly through the night. So is shattered. And of course, on top of it, the Iranians have seen this story before. They've seen what happens with evacuation orders in Gaza. They've seen what happens to evacuation orders in Beirut. And now they've been told that a huge area of Tehran, about 300,000 people, has to evacuate. And so the discussion on social media and among families is, should we go? Should we stay? And even if you try to go, the roads are absolutely jammed. People are running out of petrol simply by the car idling in the, on the highway. It's a really, really scary time.
And that evacuation order, are you referencing what Donald Trump said when he said
everybody
should leave Tehran? Or is this a separate order?
Well, there was a separate, in the way Israel does it, tells everyone for your own safety, you should leave this area. And there was a map showing this area of the city. President Trump magnified it by saying everyone should leave Tehran. Tehran is 10 million people. It's impossible. So even that, when there's these maximalist demands, you don't know what to do. I was listening today to some commentators saying that when it first started, Iranians are used to, sadly, over years, Israel assassinating people, nuclear scientists, Hamas individuals. But so when it started, when they heard all the booms, they thought, okay, it's more assassinations by Israel, by Mossad, which has penetrated incredibly. They have their own drone production factory in Tehran. It's been discovered. They're moving drones on pickups. Mossad, the Israeli spy agency. So there's a lot for people people are living with a lot and fearing that as bad as this is, it could get much, much worse.
And Lise, you've written a very good piece for the BBC In-Depth section of the website about different interpretations of what Israel's endgame is here. And we'll talk about that in a second. But Katrina, just the role of Trump in all of this. I mean, there's just a logistical thing that's happened in the last 24 hours, that he was at the G7 in Canada and he's not now, and the G7 summit is still going on. Yeah,
exactly. It's like the party without the birthday boy kind of thing, isn't it? I think, there's been a lot being read into why did he leave? Why did he not leave? Macron saying, he's gone back to do a ceasefire deal. Trump saying, no, I'm definitely not gone back to do that. President Macron got it wrong. I think possibly President Trump thought, I've got what I've came here to get from the G7. Not the viewpoint, obviously, of poor old Volodymyr Zelensky, who was there, supposed to have a meeting with President Trump today, which has been cancelled because the president's not there. He was calling a National Security Council meeting back at the White House. President Trump said, I prefer to do these things in person, not have to go into the skiff, as they call it, this like very secure lockdown kind of mobile room for these calls. I think there is a lot in that. Like, he is a person that he wants to be able to look people in the whites of their eyes when they're offering him suggestions. And if they are contemplating getting involved, then you do want to be in the White House with the actual Situation Room and all the bells and whistles that come along with that. But, it has definitely upped the ante, I think, on what may lie ahead in this dangerous time that Lise is talking about.
Yeah, and just expand on that. What are Donald Trump's options here?
Well, the option that the Israelis are asking him to do is to drop one of these so-called bunker busters, which only the US possesses, a massive, massive bomb that has the capability of basically going all the way down inside a mountain to destroy the biggest nuclear site in Iran. Only the US has these bombs, and only the US has the certain type of plane that's needed to carry them because they're huge. So the big option here is that would be American involvement. You know, it's going to be an American plane, an American bomb, an American pilot. That will be perceived as an act of war. And then you're into a very different situation, a situation that President Trump spent three election campaigns, a term in office, and the last few months saying he doesn't want to get in other people's wars. You know, he said it in his inaugural address. I will not be the president who's spending American lives and American money on other countries and other countries' borders. I'll be the peacemaker, the deal maker. He has said, I'm not going back to Washington, D.C. to do a ceasefire deal. The talks were underway. They're obviously supposed to have continued this past Sunday in Oman. That didn't happen. So it's a very uncertain, fragile time where the option available to President Trump, which his close ally Netanyahu is begging him basically to do, is a really serious one.
And is there a diplomatic option in a completely other direction?
I mean, the diplomatic option is to get the talks back on the table, right? So there was some reporting that he was contemplating sending Vice President Vance and US Envoy for All Conflicts, Steve Witkoff, to maybe Oman, somewhere else potentially, to meet the Iranian foreign minister to kind of try and resume the talks. But there's nothing on the record about that as of now. Obviously, that's the better option at this point for everyone, but it is not something that the president has said he's engaged in at this point in time.
Yeah, Lise, what's your take on the diplomacy of this and whether it's possible to restart it?
Well, I was in Oslo last week, and on Wednesday I saw the Iranian foreign minister. I saw the Omani foreign minister, al-Busaidi, who's the mediator. There were lots of other very senior people in the room. All of the talk was about the upcoming negotiations on Sunday.
And quite positive.
Well, no, saying a deal was in reach. And this was the general assessment. This was a meeting of mediators. And so they know what it takes to do the deal, the art of the deal. But the general view, and it's certainly from the Iranians was, and the Omanis as well, that it was unrealistic to ask for zero enrichment. The first nuclear deal that President Trump pulled out of under pressure from Prime Minister Netanyahu was 3.67%. That's commensurate with a civilian or commercial nuclear program. I understand there was discussion maybe 5%. But if what President Trump is talking about now, you can't... President Trump, when he really discusses it, all he really makes clear is that Iran should not have a weapon. So single-digit enrichment would not give you a nuclear weapon. So now he's still saying again, but he also says they've got to accept the deal. The deal was on the table, but the deal on the table was not doable. And from what I understand from talking to people who, with detailed knowledge of the talks, it's a very technical file, very complex. And the envoy for everything, Steve Witkoff, is used to going to Moscow sometimes not even with his own translators, and on an extremely complex file there, lots of history, lots of politics. Similarly, from what I understand, it was to have been the sixth round of talks. Only in one case did he ever bring a nuclear expert. Only in one case did he bring someone who'd been involved in 2015. So they hadn't really begun to discuss the real issues. A 60-day window was unrealistic. Israel attacked on the 61st day. So it's possible, but this would be capitulation for the Iranians, and whether right now they would not be willing to do that. It's a huge risk for them. But I keep remembering in the Iran-Iraq War from 1980 to 1988, at the end, the leader, the first Islamic leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, said it was quite a famous quote that I will swallow poison. He accepted the end of the war, because he knew Iran could be destroyed if he didn't. And so people are saying now, will Iran accept to drink poison? They're not at that stage yet. I think they would hope that wiser minds would prevail and at least allow them single digits. But this campaign has a momentum of its own, as every military general will tell you. No plan survives contact with the enemy. And I think even President Trump, who repeatedly made it clear, I want a deal, a good deal. I don't want a bad war. I want the Iranians to succeed. He saw the spectacular military attack, assassinating all the things, and he called it excellent. And there's going to be more. You wonder what's in his mind. The last point is, though I understand that people are looking for off-ramps. Certainly the Gulf leaders who President Trump recently saw on his first foreign tour, how close the bonds are. I messaged someone today in the Gulf, one of the places he stopped, and I said, what are you doing? And he said, well, we're not there yet. It's not serious yet. Would Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, call up President Trump and say, you've got to stop this? The Qataris told them all a war would be existential for them. It's just across the waterway.
And Lise, I promised that we would talk about your in-depth piece that you wrote about what Israel's intentions are here. And it's so interesting. Just break down the different theories about what different bits of the Israeli political establishment military establishment wants to achieve here.
So I think you can look at it broadly at three. What Prime Minister Netanyahu said once the strikes were unleashed, he said, I want to thwart the nuclear and ballistic missile threat from Iran. And they've repeatedly said that. But many observers believe, and there's much more information coming out now, it was also to destroy this diplomatic track, attacking on the 61st day, President Trump then saying, oh, yeah, they do want to make a deal. So that they've killed that too. There may be a little bit left, but for now it's dead. But the broader one is Prime Minister Netanyahu has spent a lifetime. He has made it his personal mission to warn the world of the dangers posed by the Islamic Republic of Iran. Over the years, either American presidents or his own generals have held him back. So as one person said to me, now that he's in, he's all in. He is going to take it as far as he gets. I spoke to one of his biographer, Anshel Pfeffer, who's he's the Israel correspondent for The Economist. And I thought he summed it up really well. He said, in the minds of the intelligence community, and bear in mind that Mossad has deeply penetrated, they say it's futile to speculate. It could fall in tomorrow, it could fall in 20 years, and that they don't have the capability to engineer it. But that, he put it, Prime Minister Netanyahu is in a Churchillian mood. He wants to, as he's often said, remake the Middle East. What will President Trump do? There were all those news reports that he stopped an Israeli plan to kill the supreme leader, Khamenei. There's the Gaza model where he wants to destroy the leadership of Hamas. There's a Hezbollah model where he decapitated Hezbollah, but Hezbollah still exists. We don't know. And this is where the momentum of the war, how far it will go, what we do know is they're attacking targets now, which really don't have any relationship to the nuclear program. Attacking
like the state broadcaster, for example, which went that video went viral of that.
Today
attack
we're hearing
yesterday.
Ambulances are hit, so they're broadening it. They're saying the infrastructure connected to the nuclear program, and it's absolutely staggering. Almost hardly a day goes by without another senior military commander being assassinated.
And Katrina, just on the American angle, and not to put you on the spot, because there's some posts on social media from Trump and J.D. Vance, the vice president, and I just want to kind of get your take on them. And I don't know if you've even seen them because you've been sat in the studio talking to us. But so Trump has posted on Truth Social, and he said, we now have complete and total control over the skies over Iran. Iran had good sky trackers and other defensive equipment and plenty of it, but it doesn't compare to American-made, conceived and manufactured stuff. Nobody does it better than the good old USA. Now, to me, that sounds like somebody who's kind of going all in behind Israel and like wading in deeper into the conflict rather than somebody who's trying to sort of stand aside.
There's a real schism in the White House and within the broader Republican Party at the moment as to what to do over this. And I think that's kind of reflective in some of what we're hearing from President Trump as well, that he's hearing from some advisors, stay away from this. We're not going in. Look what happened in Iraq. Look what happened in Afghanistan. Look at the withdrawal from Afghanistan. We don't need that. And then there's the other side of the camp which is like, oh yeah, American might, peace through strength, as we always hear. Well, this is time for the strength part. Let's go all in on that. So, I mean, there was also a long post from JD Vance as well, where he's kind of saying, oh, there's a lot going around on social media. Don't get too excited about that. The president knows, and he's still the guy that, doesn't want to be involved in foreign wars. So I think that's giving us even a tiny insight into the conversations that are happening between them at this point in time.
But JD Vance also said, you may have missed it as well, he said we should help Israel to destroy the nuclear program.
Yeah.
Which would mean those bunker busters.
The bunker busters.
Yeah, the mop.
But I mean, there's also lines in there about, kind of getting back to the diplomacy part of it. And, so I think, like, to your point earlier, Lise, we just don't know. And I think they are unsure as well as to what to do at this point.
And actually, I'm just thinking back to reading out that bit of that post where he's talking about the amazing American defense stuff. You then realize that's the difficulty of interpreting Donald Trump, because the one interpretation of that post is like it's his usual boastful pride in American stuff. And he says the word stuff, and that's one thing. But then we're always looking for a deeper meaning to it, which may not be there in this case. It could just be a boast. But because we don't know what's going on, we then seek some deeper meaning from the boast post.
The one thing about him is that when he talks about ending wars, he always talks about the suffering of the people. The people are dying. He looks at the videos from Ukraine and he thinks it's terrible. And, one very senior person, Arab foreign minister, said when I asked, well, what did you discuss with President Trump when he came to visit? And they said, we did discuss the humanitarian aid for Gaza. And they said, he is human. He does care about that sort of thing. He's got a very kind of a sort of a gut reaction to that people are dying, people are suffering. But then he gets dazzled by this military, America's military might. And he may be starting to, instead of being dazzled by being the president, the peacemaker, maybe now he's thinking, wow, I'm the commander in chief. Like, that's pretty powerful too.
Yeah, and also, at least there's another Trump post on Truth Social that's even newer than the one I just read out to Katrina, where he says, we know exactly where the so-called supreme leader is hiding. He's an easy target, but is safe there. We're not going to take him out, brackets, kill, exclamation mark, at least not for now. We don't want missiles shot at civilians or American soldiers. Our patience is wearing thin. And then, actually, which seems quite ridiculous, thank you for your attention in this matter.
I mean, it's astonishing that we are talking about this.
Yeah.
We are living in 2025 where never has our understanding of the rules of war, international humanitarian law, and has it become normalized that one country can just assassinate dozens of people, and now we're discussing politicians, threatening to kill someone, a leader of a country, whether or not you like the leader or not,
but also suggesting that they're not going to kill him now.
But that's the same thing too now, as if it's just a question of time. I mean, even, the Director General of the IAEA, Rafael Grossi, pointed out that attacking nuclear facilities, whatever the context or circumstances, is illegal. Let's not forget all this. We're getting caught, kind of.
Yeah.
It's become too.
And then also, Katrina, it's confusing because that line about, but we don't want missiles shot at civilians or American soldiers. Our patience is wearing thin. So, okay, he's saying don't retaliate against American interest in the Gulf, because that would draw America
which Iran has said it will do. So he's responding to
But then
that
equally, we don't want missiles
threat.
shot at civilians. That does suggest that he's angry at maybe both sides for the fact that there's civilian lives at risk here.
I think as well, President Trump approaches a lot of this the way he approached, business deals in the past, which is he talks the game right up to the nth degree. It's like it's a game of chicken in a way. We've talked about that in trade with TACO. Trump always chickens out kind of thing. But this is part of his MO, is like, this is what we can do. We know where you are. You are safe there for now kind of thing. It's do you believe what he's saying? If you're an Iranian in this instance, if you're the rest of the world watching this, is this a call out for others to try and intervene, to get involved? But it is just extraordinary that, this is diplomacy, if you want to call
but
it that, via social media.
But you look at it the other side, it's like, okay, we're not used to an American leader talking like this, although maybe we should be more used to it in the second era of Donald Trump. But at least actually, when you look at the rhetoric that comes from the regime in Tehran, like, I mean, they call America the Great Satan. They're not exactly like diplomatic users of language themselves, are they?
Yes, and Britain's a little Satan. Yes, and that is part of Israel's fear about why they see it as an existential threat, that the supreme leader, who we've just been discussing, does call for what he says the Zionist entity to be destroyed. And they say it will happen, it's all just a matter of time. And is it just rhetoric? The people who negotiated the nuclear deal in 2015 don't talk like that. They wanted a deal, and in that deal, it was just about the nuclear program, but it was also about, hopefully, that if relations normalize, that we can then deal with other issues, ballistic missiles, broader relationships. Iran speaks with many voices. It's a very divided country, but I think the broad majority of Iranians just want to live in a normal country. They want, it's often said that they're one of the most pro-American countries in the Middle East. They just want to be able to, have access to the same technologies. Like, I was trying to organize an interview today with someone in Tehran, and you just naturally say, okay, we don't really have any satellite, but we could do it on Zoom. He goes, well, we can't do it on Zoom. Under sanctions, we can't use Zoom. And you just forget that things we take for granted. So,
Do you think, Lisa, this type of language, we know where you are and we can get you. Does that in any way entice people to come and have talks or negotiations?
On one level, they just see it as, it's part of the, the mutual loathing. In another, it's they're very strategic. In Iran, they're very strategic thinkers. They're not new at this game. And I remember when the last year where they both crossed the line and targeted each other directly. We used to say about the Iranians playing the long game, strategic patience. They would just wait. They wouldn't attack immediately. They would strike when the enemy was not expecting it. But that now they're obviously not doing that anymore. The game has been dramatically changed. And it was always said that the supreme leader, who, it's interesting going back and looking at the videos in 1989 after Khomeini died, that he's saying at the meeting, no, I don't want to be this. And he's really a cautious person. But now, of course, partly pushed by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, who are much more radical, they have been taking more dramatic steps because they're under unprecedented pressure. They have to defend. They don't want to be seen to be giving in to the great Satan. But on the other hand, the overriding objective is the survival of the Islamic Republic. And if that means temporarily giving up the nuclear program, I think they'd have to do if it got to that. But it's not there yet, which is why I think Prime Minister Netanyahu has a very long game. I was thinking today, last year's strikes where he was under real pressure from President Biden, don't attack military targets, show restraint, don't attack the nuclear facilities. What they quietly did, and there wasn't a lot of attention at the time, it came out slowly, they basically attacked all the air defenses. And then people started saying, oh, they're exposed. And I was thinking today, this is what they thought, right? We'll do it for now. We'll be ready. And now you have...
So it was Netanyahu playing the long game.
Yeah, playing the long game. They're both playing long game. So both of them see each other as an existential threat. So the survival of each other, the survival of the Jewish state, obviously is not at issue right now. It's not at issue. But Iran is really facing... It must be terrifying. Everyone you talk to, whether it's the families living in a residential block or the ones sitting in their cars in those monster traffic jams or the regime officials, it's all about survival now.
It's been fascinating. And that's the beauty of having you both sat on the same sofa rather than one person on a laptop and another person thousands of miles away. Elise, thank you very much.
Good to see you. I hope we'll have better news.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Katrina, thanks for dropping in.
Great to be here.
I should probably say for Americans, thanks for dropping by.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by.
What do they say?